Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about syllabification. Okay, and just to remind everybody, this is the beginners class. We're on class number 3. Okay, on Sundays we have our intermediate class, which is on class 26. All right. So of course everybody's welcome here. If you want to come through and just go through it again, even if you're at intermediate level, that's fine. All right. So a syllable is how we break up words naturally in pronunciation, right? A word is composed of one or more syllables, right? Even the word syllable, syllable, right? The word syllable has 3 syllables. So here we have syllable, all right? Just as English has rules for how to break up syllables, Hebrew does as well, all right? In Hebrew, with the exception of u, meaning shurik, a syllable cannot start with a vowel, all right? So we have to have one of the letters from the alphabet, the consonants. The exception is sometimes you'll see u at the beginning of a word. That is the only exception. There are 2 kinds of syllables. Open, this means the syllable ends in a vowel sound. Do you remember your vowels from school? A, E, I, O, U, or as they're called in Hawaii, iau, sometimes Y, and sometimes W. Those are the vowel sounds in English, and as they are in many languages. So in Hebrew, the similar sounds also we consider vowels, and we usually indicate them. Well, you've learned the vowel letters in the writing system, so I'm not going to go into that again. So for example, the Yiddish word shah, which means shut up, is written in Yiddish with the Hebrew alphabet, sheen, and then something like this with comments under ah, sh, ah. So if that were a syllable in Hebrew, that would be an open syllable because the comments is a long vowel, right? So sha. A closed syllable is one that starts with a consonant, a vowel, it has a vowel, and then it ends in a consonant. For example, lach, which means morsel. Lach. So let's take our word then. Here's the example. Shalach, we break it up like this. Sha and lach. It's 2 syllables. The first syllable is open. It's open because it's followed by a vowel sound. The second syllable is closed because it ends in a consonant. Lach. That's also why we have that short vowel there. Achot, sister. Ah and chot. And before you get confused and say, wait, you told me we don't start with a vowel sound? Aleph is not a vowel sound. It is unfortunate that we pronounce it today in a way that treats it as if it's not a consonant. But in ancient times, it had a sound. It was like a glottal stop, but we don't do that anymore. Kaved, he is heavy, or he is honored. Ka and Vade. Ka and Vade. And if you're wondering, this is advanced, why there's a long vowel here, it's because we have the accent. We're allowed to have the long vowel there and still have a closed syllable. In Hebrew, usually the last syllable in the word is accented. That's called the ultimate syllable in grammarese. In Tagalog, it's usually the penultimate syllable, so the next to last syllable. In English, it's usually the first syllable. Like maybe 70% of the time, we accent at the beginning of the word. Tagalog does near the end, and Hebrew does the end, usually. So here is a basic rule. Short and silent. If a short vowel comes before the consonant under which there is a schwa, the schwa is silent. Okay? So for example, midbar, which means an area where there's not humans living, right? So this can be a desert or it can just be like a barren land, the wilderness sometimes, the Torah will say. So midbar. So here we have a short vowel and a schwa. So the schwa is silent because it follows a short vowel. So we know that that letter is the end of the syllable. Let me turn on my drawing and stuff. It's because of this short vowel here that we know that the syllable divides after it. Mid is closed and bar is closed. Yaktil, yaktil, to cause to kill. He causes to kill. So here we have a schwa. It's preceded by a short vowel, so the syllable splits right after it. So the schwa is silent, yaktil. Notice it's not yaketil. This is not midibbar, but it's midbar, yaktil. Those are our two syllables. They split down the middle there. Okay, I duplicated that slide. Here we have the next. If a schwa is under the first consonant of a word, that schwa is vocal, so it's going to be a little sound. It's not preceded by a short vowel. You can reason that's why it's happening. So you really don't have to know the second rule. The first rule preempts it. Devarim. Devarim is de, it's vocal. Devarim. If there are two schwas in a row, the first is silent and the second is vocal. The first is preceded by a short vowel and is silent, and the second is not and is vocal. So for example, two schwas in a row, we split the syllable down the middle. So it's yik telu. Yik telu. At this time, I think it's a good idea to do a quick BeGaD KePhaT review. All right? Some of you are new, so this won't be a review for you. But for those of you who are here since the first class, these letters on the left, the modern pronunciation is affected by the presence of a dot being inside of them. That dot we call Dagesh, from the verb Dagesh, to pierce. It's like a piercing in the letter. So these are the same letters. They're just written in different ways. So if I want to say a b sound as in boy, I put a dot in there, and it's b. If I want to make it soft, like the letter V in verse, then there's no Dagesh. A K sound, we put a dot in this letter, in the kaf. With no dot, it's ch, like Loch Ness Monster. Although we usually transliterate it KH. P, like Pinoy, we put a dot in there. If we take the dot out, then it becomes F, like Philippines. These on the right, you don't need to worry about. In ancient times, they were pronounced differently, and I'm happy to share that for those who are interested what the pronunciation was. But maybe the only one I'll comment on is the tav, that this was a t and this was a th, th. That's why English calls Shabbat Shabbath. It's oftentimes written. It's written in the older English translations because they were being true to this older pronunciation. It's also why Ashkenazi German Jews, we still differentiate between these. So this one will be t, and this is a s, right? So there's a difference in sounds. So that's why if you've ever heard, like an American Jew, most American Jews are Ashkenazi, German Jews, will say Shabbos, right? So in Yiddish, Shabbat Shalom is Good Shabbos, right? Because there's no dot in there. So that's why. You don't need to do that. We're always going to use the Sephardic pronunciation in this class, which is the Spanish Jewish pronunciation, because that is what is used in the land of Israel. And for the sake of Klal Yisrael, I think it's better to pronounce things the same way. Now we're talking about the Dagesh Forte. This is a hard Dagesh, also known as Dagesh Chazak. So the second type of dot is a Dagesh Forte. It's used to mark a doubled consonant. So the Hebrew scribes did not like to write the same letter twice in a row. So instead, they would just write it once. And then around 1100 to 1000 years ago, the Masoretes, who preserved the Hebrew Bible for us, they went through and they developed this system of putting dots when it meant there were two letters. The pronunciation told them there were two letters there. That is a strong piercing, a strong Dagesh, okay? So if we did this in English, if you have the word illegal, I'm going to use a capital L when I write it, okay? So let's just say we have our I, that's an I, and then L. If I didn't want to write the second L, then I could put just a Dagesh in the middle if we use Dageshim. Illegal, right? Because that's spelled with two L's. Illegal. That's what the strong Dagesh tells you. It tells you there's two of those letters there. Okay? So for example, tanakhiyt, which means he purified, is written as tanakhiyt. See the dot in the middle? That's the strong Dagesh. And I know for sure that it's a strong Dagesh because we have a vowel sound in front of it. Okay? Also, this is not a BeGaD KePhaT letter. Notice that if you remove the Dagesh and you didn't see the vowels, it means he sinned. Just having that one dot in there changes the meaning to mean he purified. The same is true when we have a double consonant with a schwa under it. So for example, yis sadu. There's two samichs here. You see the dot? The Dagesh, it's showing me that there are two of them here. So this actually would have been written yis, and we split the syllable, sadu. So when I see it, I pronounce it that way, yis sadu. I don't say yis du, yis sadu. Because the rule when you have two schwas next to each other, the first is vocal and the second is silent. These are the letters which cannot take a piercing. They cannot be doubled. They cannot take a Dagesh. All right? We call them the gutturals. And then to be correct, I say the gutturals and reish. Okay? Reish is not a guttural, but he's friends with the gutturals. He likes to act like them. He always wanted to be a guttural growing up. Okay? So he's in that club. You cannot double the reish. And so if you think about what a reish really is, how would you double r? You're gonna you just can't do it, right? Similarly with chayt, imagine doubling chayt. People didn't do that, okay? With ayin, even though we don't pronounce it today, this was kind of like you're swallowing something. Oh, ayin, ayin. How would you double that? Oh, like you're being strangled or something. It just doesn't make sense. So we do not double these letters, all right? Which means they do not get a Dagesh. And before you look in your Tanakh and you find an aleph that has a dot in it, Rabbi, there's you lied to me. Look, that's something else. That's mapik, we'll talk about. Or a hey, that has a dot in it, that's mapik. They didn't have computers, okay? So they were limited in the signs they could use to reasonably reproduce the scripture accurately. So they used the dot for different things. Sometimes it's mapik, sometimes it's Dagesh. But mapik is more advanced. Don't worry about that for now. So the gutturals and reish never get a Dagesh. And so if you have a situation where the grammar tells you should be doubling that letter, other things will happen to compensate for it. We call it compensatory lengthening, right? So other vowels around there will get longer to make up for the fact that these guys are not doubling. And that's how a Hebrew speaker can hear that something is happening there, that it's a different form of the word. Both types of Dagesh can cause the BeGaD KePhaT letters to be pronounced with a hard sound. So the Veit with a Dagesh in there, whether it's a hard Dagesh or just because he's a BeGaD KePhaT letter, it's going to be B. The pronunciation will be the same, whether it's a weak Dagesh or a strong Dagesh. Okay? And the intermediate students, I hope you'll help the new guys out with this. I know this is a concept that people are probably going to be in the fog with for a little while. So hopefully you can help them to understand better offline what's going on. All right, I want to do a little bit more practice on pronunciation since you're kind of being thrown in the water here. So look at this word, which is up here in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to read this to you, but first I want to talk about some things, okay? Look at the first schwa under the mem. The very first letter is a mem. Look at that schwa. So look at it. I was changing colors so I could do a highlight. This schwa is pronounced. It's vocal. Because whenever a schwa begins a syllable, in this case it's the beginning of the word, so it's definitely starting a syllable, then it's vocal. So it's a little eh. You see how the transliteration, it's has a little e here? That's the sound. Some dictionaries make that thing upside down. Eh. So meh, meh. I'm exaggerating so you hear it. Sav, v'cha. See, look, the vav has a dagesh. So we have two vavs, right? That means there's two vavs there. And so when you have two vavs like that, two consonants, and they both have a schwa under them, let me just write that out for you so you can see. It means that this word, this vav, he actually expands out. Let's expand him out. It's actually two vavs, right? So there's vav and another vav. The scribe just wrote it by putting a dot there. And since there's a schwa under it, that means it's schwa under one and schwa under the next. And so this means that we divide our syllable down the middle. Whenever you have two letters next to each other and they both have a schwa, we divide the syllable down the middle, right? So this is where the syllable break occurs. The first one will be vocal, just like this one starts a syllable, and the second one, pardon me, the first one will be silent, and the second one starts a syllable, so he is vocal. So the second one will be pronounced just like that one that's at the beginning of the word. We have the same sort of thing happening here. So this guy is, why is it red? I changed it to yellow. Computer's not obeying. All right, there we go. Okay. So me, sav, silent, vecha. Metzav vecha. Here's the correct pronunciation. Metzav vecha. And this should be KH. I don't know why there's K there. It should be KH. The tzadi has one vowel notation. It cannot have two vowels. Right? So he's metzav vecha. Okay? Let's look at another one. This word is pronounced sin. Sin. The yod is functioning as a vowel letter. Remember we covered the vowel letters? So this means it doesn't have a y sound, as in yes, right? It's just a yod. It's part of this vowel. It's a long kirik, we call this. Because before we had the dots on the bottom, the scribes would write the yod there to mean there's an I sound, sin. Mitzavacha means he commanded you. Sim means he placed or gave, like set on a table or something. All right, let's take a breath for a second. Are there any questions over here? Actually, maybe let me let you see this. I'll just give you 30 seconds to think about that. Please feel free to type or ask any questions or comments.
Sir, for clarification, please. For clarification, please.
I'm sorry, that's a, for clarification, what? That's in English we call a dangling modifier. I need a
Yes, thank
verb. What do you need for clarification?
I need to ask something, sir, please.
Sure,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, please.
Okay. When we say Dagesh Forte, it means it applies to any letter, right? Whereas compared to BeGaD KePhaT, it applies to those letters only, BeGaD KePhaT, Beb, Get, and so forth. When we say
Excellent.
Dagesh Forte, it applies to any letter.
Excellent question. Right. That's right. Dagesh
Thank you.
Forte, what it means technically is that that letter is doubled. There are two of them there. Okay? The Dagesh Lene, the weak Dagesh, whatever you want to call it, it only means that we're pronouncing the letter stronger. Right? But there are not two of them there. And the only letters that can take that are the BeGaD KePhaT letters. The letters in that mnemonic. The B, the Beit, the K, the Kaf, the F, the Fe, the BeGaD KePhaT, the and the the Tav, and the Dalet, sorry, and the Gimel. BeGaD KePhaT. Those are the ones that can take the weak Dagesh. meaning that it only affects or once affected pronunciation. Like we don't care about the g and the d anymore today, but it once did. So you're exactly right. When it's a strong dagesh, that can go into any letter except for the gutturals or resh. They can't take one at all, so you won't see it in there. So you're exactly right, and it means there's a doubled letter there. Okay?
Thank, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on. Yes.
Question,
Oh, go ahead, please.
Rabbi.
Yes.
The word, the preceding word sim is one syllable.
Yes. Yes. Good question. Did everybody
Okay,
get
thank.
that? It's not si-im, right? It's sim. Sim. Because this yod is not a consonant here. He's functioning as a vowel letter. Remember, hey can also be a vowel letter, and vav can also be a vowel letter. So it means it's just part of the vowel sound. Sim, right? Sim shalom. He placed peace. He set peace. Did everybody get that? So here's the
Yep.
correct transliteration: sim, not si-im, right? And this is a mistake people make a lot of times. They'll try to make that yod into a consonant when it's not, in places when it's not. Good.